I'm Allen Henderson, a broker at Henderson Real Estate. Welcome to the Ahwatukee History Project. In today's episode, Marty interviews a renowned landscape architect, A. Wayne Smith. Mr. Smith designed the master plan for the original Ahwatukee retirement community, Mountain Park Ranch, the Foothills, and Club West. Let's listen in as Mr. Smith discusses the design of the Lakes Golf Course.
Wayne, is one thing I want to ask you before we leave the subject of Leroy Smith. He owned a lot of land, and one parcel he owned was across the freeway. It is between Warner and today's Ray Road, and it's that big empty excavation pit. Can you tell me a little bit about that pit and any involvement you might have had?
Sure. Well, Mr. Smith bought the property on Warner Road, and I think it's the Drury Hotel is on it now. I think it was approximately 40 acres there. And the pit kind of amazed me or enamored me a bit as just maybe doing something really unique. And I suggested to Mr. Smith that maybe he ought to buy the hole in the, we called it the hole in the ground, the pit. And if people don't understand why that hole in the ground was there, but that was a borrow pit that the ADOT used to build the off-ramps for Warner, Elliott, Ray, and after the highway was complete, they just left it. But the other part is it was right in line for the runoff from South Mountain. The major, all the way from the towers, all along the southeast portion of South Mountain Park, came down, and we knew that there was a drainage problem. And in the master plan, the original one, we showed an area, and I think it was 18 acres, that would be for retention of the water coming through. But as the plan was engineered, Sudbeck Engineering said, wait a minute, that's not going to handle it. There's going to be way too much water coming down, and you've got to expand that to 101 acres. And that's when the idea, make it a short course, golf course.
Well, before we go to the golf course, I'd just like to finish on the pit.
Yes.
Didn't you have a vision for something pretty grand in there,
yes,
in contrast to the stark open dirt we see today?
Right. Well, as a part of all this excavation, I thought that if Mr. Smith could put his 40 acres into, and I think it's about a 40-acre pit, and we could do earth sculpturing in such a way that there could be a lake down in the bottom, and then soften that instead of just a drop-off
right
from Warner Road, gradually go down and have offices and restaurants, sort of I called it the hanging gardens, that could have been placed in that 80-acre parcel. Well, Mr. Smith said, go to the highway department, see if we can negotiate something. Well, in going to the highway department, they said, oh, no, you can't, because flood control says that is going to fill up from a 100-year flood from the water that comes off of the backside of South Mountain, going through where our little 19 acres would not handle anything, and that's why the golf course expanded to 100 acres. But anyway, again, that sort of poo-pooed the idea of Mr. Smith being able to take it and make something good out of it. I understand now that the city of Tempe might be thinking about doing something with it, but it's easier to do something with 80 acres than to squeeze it into a hole in the ground and or fill it in or whatever. But the best part of it is that with the 100 acres, it was just enough for a good short course, golf course. And that's when they hired Gary Panks, and it was rated one of the top 10 short courses in the country.
And of course, we're referring to the Lakes Golf Course.
Because the lakes, there are 5 of them, and as you know, water is the best dissipator of water energy. So if they have higher freeboard on the sides in such a way that the water would come down, they would fill up the first lake, it would overflow to the second, it would fill up the second, and by the time it got down to 48th Street, water was always collected in those lakes, never went under the freeway, and never a drop of water ever got into the hole in the ground, and that's why it's just been a hole in the ground.
Still waiting for that 100-year flood.
Well, it's interesting because this being 2019, in April, I think it was, we had a rather severe rain, and it was the first time I went over and looked down and there was water. Well, and the reason there was water is because there was no grass and there was no lakes, and it was just a muddy runoff from the mountains, came down and went under the freeway and was down in the bottom of the hole.
So my reason for asking, Wayne, was it sounds like if the highway department thought a little differently, we might have had a grand destination just right over the freeway there, which would have added to the quality of life for Ahwatukee-Foothills residents.
It would have.
What might have been?
Yes, it could. It really could have. And I just remember Mr. Smith well enough to know that he would not have allowed something to happen there that was not substantial.
Right.
And unfortunately, I look at that hole every time I go by there thinking what it could have been.
Yeah, exactly.
But
well, you mentioned the Ahwatukee Lakes Golf Course, which opened in 1979. What percentage of that would you say functioned as drainage management compared to the golf part of it?
It's just my assumption, but knowing the amount of water that could come down off of the mountain, golf courses have 2 major functions. One is recreation and economics. The other is health, safety, and public welfare. If that golf course was not there, the residents in Ahwatukee, all around where the golf course is, the water would come to where the houses are and fan out and would be flooding all of the houses in there. And so the 100 acres really is more valuable for health, safety, and public welfare, even though it was a very, very profitable short golf course, and particularly now, golfing is changing appearance. The millennials are not playing as much golf. People are older, want to play short courses, and the short courses really are the ones that are much more functional now.
Right. You mentioned the golf part of it. It actually was rated among the top 10 short courses in the country in the early 1980s. That's how far we have fallen.
I know.
Do you want to venture a prediction as to where it's going at this point?
I really wish I could, but I can't. I don't. Since it's all in court, in the legal, when you get attorneys involved, it's hard to understand where the course of action will ultimately be.
Right.
You know, I would still love to see a golf course back again, and there are people who have shown interest, but it's almost starting at scratch because all of the sprinkler systems have been removed.
Yeah. All
the trees have been cut down. And so all you have is really 5 empty lakes. Yeah. And it even if they're there, they still absorb some water, but not the amount that was intended to be.
Right.